Good evening, and welcome to Having a Drink with Mink, America's tastiest, non-FDA approved entertainment. I am your host, Jason Mink, serving up another heapin' helping of diced, deboned, old-style comics fun. But before we dig in, make sure you have a nice beverage on hand to wash it all down. Bon appetit! Previous viewers of the show will remember our love for vintage toys, and we're still passionate about them. What you may not know is that I spent years writing about and collecting modern toys. And while that original collection is long gone, I've slowly been rebuilding Marvel Legends, a line that I've been into on and off since its debut in 2001. Here's my latest purchase, an uncanny Kirby creation, the Eternal Ikaris. The Eternals is a hit-or-miss concept that's been knocking around Marvel Comics for the past 40 years or so. Ikaris is the only Eternal in this assortment, and probably the only comic Eternal that we'll ever get, after the monumental failure of the film. Think late 1970s Kirby archetype, part Luke Skywalker, part Thundar the Barbarian, a shaggy-haired hero with a vague power set. Honestly, I don't remember a lot about Ikaris. Those late-era Kirby titles have a tendency to blend together. But let's not get hung up on that. It's a toy, and he could be whatever you want. I'm really liking the color choices here. The sober blue contrasts nicely with the primer red of the boots and gloves. There's no paint on these extremities to speak of, but the sculpt has enough depth and dimensionality to provide natural shadows. The tabard and chest do feature some gold paint accents, which are fairly clean. There's slop in a few spots, but nothing major. The gold adds an impressive degree of pop, capturing that Kirby vibe in the best possible way. The transition from old-school paint masks to digital printing provides an impressive amount of realism to the face. The eyes are clear, bright, and most importantly, look straight on, giving an intensity to Ikaris's gaze. An extra head featuring the character's iconic eye beams would have been appreciated. Otherwise, he's a trifle staid, maybe constipated. He does come with an extra set of gesturing hands, which are fine, if not ideal. The saluting hands, first seen with Captain America a few years back, might have made more sense, but it is what it is. Ikaris's articulation is the standard Marvel Legends stuff. The toy can take on a variety of character-specific poses, looking good in both passive and active stances. The movement isn't impeded in any way by the new pinless joints. Instead, these add to the overall fluidity of the aesthetic, allowing you to pose him effectively in photos or just on your shelf. He may not be anyone's most demanded character, but Ikaris is a solid representation that we're honestly lucky to get. Alright, moving on to the wonderful world of the printed page, and some fantastic additions to the collection. First off, a now legendary issue of Heavy Metal. At least to me. My original copy was a hand-me-down of a hand-me-down, something that filtered in from my buddy's sister's boyfriend, who presumably needed room in his back seat for other activities. And while I had a few other issues of this then notorious publication in the secret pile under the bottom drawer, this one was always my favorite, and it's obvious why. Mobius, Juliet, Burns. It's astonishing to see so many A-list talents in a monthly magazine, and yet, here they are. Granted, a lot of this stuff was too heady for me then. Heck, maybe it is now, but it was storytelling true to itself, bold and visionary ideas that pushed the boundaries of the medium. The idea that this was being sold next to TV Guide and Field and Stream is pretty mind-blowing and shows that, in spite of social and technological innovation, we've lost something magical, intangible, an entire world accessible not with QR codes and iPhones, but with a few bucks and the willingness to risk it. Perhaps my favorite story in the bunch is Ranzarox, a bone-breaking watercolor lullaby set in the relentlessly dystopian future society seemed to be prepping us for at the time. Terse, acerbic, the storytelling bites at the fabric of civilization, revealing red, twitching viscera beneath. Its emulation of fine art beautifully underscores the gore, giving the story a Romanesque decadence. The contrast of hipster chic and urban squalor really hits home in 2024. All this, plus a lengthy interview with one of young Mink's favorite authors, no less than Douglas Don't Panic Adams. I pored over every page of this mag more times than I can count. In a way, it's surreal, revisiting something so familiar and yet half forgotten, a startling degree of intimacy anonymously knit between the pages. Not a bad find for $2. Following on with the now oldest Spider-Man comic in my collection, Amazing Spider-Man number 21. The previous record holder was 28, first appearance of the Molten Man, so it's a thrill to add another Ditko Spidey to my humble horde. In this eyebrow-raising episode, old Webhead mixes it up with no less than Johnny Storm, the Human Torch. Seems Pete has had a meet-cute with Johnny's main squeeze, Dory Evans, sending the hot-headed hero teen into a jealous fit. Honestly, I'm surprised he didn't challenge Peter to a race for pink slips. Not that girls had pink slips. Well, maybe they did in the 1960s. No wonder Brian Wilson got so bent out of shape. At any rate, this issue features some fun, spidery choreography from Mr. Ditko, who always delivers the goods. I know this would have him spinning in his grave, but imagine if Marvel did a Spidey cartoon with a Ditko aesthetic. That way the company could acknowledge his contributions and maybe throw a few bucks to his family and resolve some of the long-standing issues that still haunt the creator's legacy. It's something to consider. And no, Dory Evans didn't put me up to it. Following on is Marvel Premiere 36 and the moon-fueled menace of the Man-Wolf. Coming in at the tail end of the 1970s Marvel monster explosion, the Man-Wolf proved more adept at weathering the changes than his bestial brethren. There seemed to be a push to make the character happen, and being associated with old Webhead didn't hurt any. Here Wolfie gets the marquee treatment, with art from no less than upcoming superstar George Perez. As a Marvel reader of the time, there was the sense that the really exciting stuff was happening in off-the-path books like this. Well, Mr. X-Men. Long have we enjoyed the adventures of Lois Lane here on the channel. Her title was around for decades, allowing the character the chance to explore fads and trends, and perhaps even set one or two herself. To wit, a decade before Beldar and his cone-headed brood hit the scene, Lois was rocking this cantaloupe-shaped cranium. Of course, it comes her way as a result of tampering with the unseen forces that govern our very universe, and justifiably so. Some people never learn. However, instead of doing the sensible thing and starting an OnlyFans for MODOK fetishists, Lois decides to hide her affliction in more progressively comical ways. I'd say she should just lean into it, but that would probably result in a loss of balance and a serious insurance payout for Perry White. Do you know the last time the Daily Planet turned a profit? Drabble was still being published. Anyway, eventually Bizarro shows up, and he's more than down with this new look. Instead of leading to some reevaluation for Lois about how a person's value stems from internal worth and hard-won morals, the ray wears off, and she can go back to being her usual myopic self. If you ask me, Soups is better off with Lana Lang, for at least two reasons that I can think of off the top of my head, so to speak. I've slowly been replacing the comics that I was forced to sell off years ago. Avengers 221 sees the old order changeth. In the early 1980s, a new Avengers roster was a big deal, before the Earth's mightiest heroes had been diluted with C-listers and also-rans. Here, Thor extends membership to no less than Spider-Man. The last time that happened was way back, in Avengers 11, with both sides realizing it wouldn't be a good fit. Here the Thunder God makes a new case for joining up, and old Webhead seriously seems to consider the offer before Marvel pulls the card off the table for another 20 years. Then we're whisked off to Jan's house, and what a spread! Presumably tired of being the only gal in the spa, the Wasp gathers together Spider-Woman, Black Widow, Dazzler, and Susan Storm, but before any serious recruitment can occur, the place is attacked by the Meccano Marauder, a wannabe supervillain who would eventually go straight and join the Avengers support team. But that's getting ahead of ourselves. The gals team up and make short work of the cybernetic criminal, but are more interested in going their separate ways than joining the world's most elite super team. In the end, Cap and Iron Man managed to convince Hawkeye to come back for like the 8th time, but to Clint's surprise, he's going to be joined by the Jade Giantess known as the She-Hulk. And she smokes! What's the world coming to? Speaking of books I need to rebuild the old collection, and it's Secret Wars number 8. As my original now belongs to some other lucky SOB, I've decided to make do with this recently released replica edition. For $5, you get a more or less faithful reproduction of the issue as it appeared. I guess the lower quality of the ads is a result of them being scans, as these old non-story layouts long been lost or scrapped. The story pages themselves are bright and clean, which is both good and bad. The production of Secret Wars was notoriously rushed, and subsequently, there's very little in the way of background detail in these later issues. Subsequently, some panels are primarily a single color, which can make the souffle seem a touch underbaked. Still, if you need a copy of 8 to finish your Secret Wars run, this is a more than acceptable stand-in. At least until you find that box of money. Speaking of Jack Kirby, here's Captain Victory, number 7. That's right, a little something from the 1980s and our friends at PC Comics. While I've read an issue here and there, I've been trying to build the entire run so I can tackle the saga from the beginning. And this very well may be the last issue I need. I'll consult the archive, but in the meantime, let's dig the groovy artwork. At this point in time, Jack was working as a consultant for Ruby Spears Animation and making a much better living in Hollywood than he ever had working in comics. It says a lot about the King's love for the medium that he kept producing work for it, even though he no longer needed to. These are big, bombastic books that are well worth a look. Are there any Shining Knight fans out there? Hello? Well, while the character may not be in anyone's top 10, everyone loves Frank Frazetta, so DC Comics issued this nifty book featuring reprints of the artist's work on the strip. Originally a member of the court of King Arthur, Sir Justin and his winged horse Victory were trapped beneath an ice sheet and plunged into suspended animation, only to be revived in modern times. As such, DC was able to tell both flashback and contemporary stories featuring the character, which allowed for some compelling possibilities. In the modern age, Sir Justin was one of the 7 soldiers of Victory, fighting alongside heroes like Crimson Avenger and the Vigilante. But none of these were illustrated by one of fantasy art's greatest creators, so you won't find him here. These stories originally appeared in Adventure Comics, although they possess a storybook illustration quality rarely seen in comics of the era. If you like Equus, you're sure to love this. Here's an issue of Priscilla's Pop, and the point in the video where other channels might extol the virtues of artist Al Vermeer. They talk about the economy of his line work or his compositional sophistication in balancing minimalist elements to achieve a narrative tension. I don't know. All I see are Sunday Funny type characters with weird eyes. Like hauntingly weird. Maybe this is just what Vermeer was known for, or maybe this is what he saw when he looked in the mirror. I'm thinking thyroid medicine in any case. After all, if you don't take care of you, who will? I scanned this issue a few months back and promptly misplaced it, but research shows it's Crazy Comics number 7. We begin as one must in these trying times with Silly Seal and Ziggy Pig, creations of no less than Madman Al Jaffe. Our heroes end up lost in this winter wonderland, encountering its friendly, if frostbitten residents. I'm not sure what it is, but there's a haunting beauty to this community's industrial munitions plant. I guess everything looks prettier in the snow. Seal and Pig discover this brutal truth as these fiery entities attack the Snowman City. And while the day is saved thanks to a precision military-grade iceball assault, our heroes end up in the hospital. And hello, nurse! Shelley Duvall here can check my temperature anytime. Inky is just that, an overly viscous exercise in 4-color merriment. Our rough and ready hero finds himself navigating an allogenous world, populated by oddball characters and critters. Longtime timely artist Mo Wortham contributes the art here. He may be best known as an inker, but it's his own work that's really worth a second look. It's a compellingly fluid style, but also channels something raw and primitive, its almost salacious line weight slapping damply against the retina. I don't know. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. Next up, The Creeper. No, not Steve Ditko's semi-memorable post-Marvel creation, but this slouching, overcoated skulker. I struggled to figure out who this guy reminded me of until I realized it was the old Crazy Magazine mascot. His Harpo-esque silence and sneaky nature always created a sense of unease in young Mink, and that hasn't really changed here. I'm not sure if it's just the archetype or what, but the Creeper creeps me out. Let's wrap things up with this stripped issue of Bob Hope. Comics like this were meant to be destroyed after the newsstand owner redeemed the top third of the cover for credit, but as you can see, hope endures. Here, Bob and this Titian-haired honey venture into a haunted house, encountering bats, rats, and spooky ghosts. Of course, as this is a Comics Code-approved book, no such supernatural shenanigans are going on. It's just the Klan. Boy, those guys turn up in the craziest of places. Well, that's it for this episode. I know, it went by too fast, but that just means the next one will be all the sweeter. Join us for more mirth, mayhem, and of course, old comics. You gotta have old comics. Until then, I am Jason Mink. Cheers.